All right, welcome back to the Onside Pod, a field guide production. Today we are joined by one of our good friends, Ian Timan, who happened to be vacationing in the same location as me the last few days in Orlando. So we ended up seeing each other and chatting a little bit briefly about what we're going to talk about today, which is college football as a whole, and looking at Ohio State, their season, seeing as though me and Ian are both alumni of the university and had the had to unfortunately see them
Oh, come
lose.
on.
But yeah,
You're 1
but
year
yeah,
off championship. Yeah.
yeah, I know. Yeah, boohoo, boohoo.
Yeah. Yeah.
But nonetheless, still just talk about the season as a whole, specifically looking at the playoffs and kind of chat about all of it as a whole. So yeah, Ian, can you talk us through sort of like your, I don't know, just what you've thought about this season and being a college football fan in general for seemingly your whole life? I mean, I've known you for a long time now, and you've
Yeah,
always been a big college football guy.
yeah, for sure. And I've had the privilege of growing up in Columbus, Ohio, and bleeding scarlet and gray. My dad works at the university, so we've had season tickets since I was in grade school. And man, just love the Buckeyes. I was there for 8 years at the university. My wife and I actually went to the national championship last year, so got to taste the sweetness of the season, which made maybe this season a little more bitter following the greatness that we experienced last year. But yeah,
And
love.
was the 8 years like a multi-major situation, or like you're switching your major a bunch of times, or what happened there?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I got 5 years in undergrad, switching majors a couple time there, and then 3 years in grad school. So but it's awesome. I have a whole family of alumni. We went to Africa last summer, and we've got a picture of the whole OHIO and the and the Savannah, and it's great. Love college football. Love what they're doing right now with the playoff. Obviously, got to watch Ohio State in the BCS era in 2007, 2008 when they played in the national championships against LSU in Florida, and then kick off the playoff era with the four-team 2014 championship, and then the first 12 team, obviously the Bucks kind of bookending the beginning of the championship era for each of those, and then obviously this season a little bit of a letdown, but man, just exciting to see how things have changed over the years.
Yeah.
Kyle, what would you grade like this season overall for as an Ohio State fan? Like
Hmm.
specifically, obviously it's not gonna be A plus. I guess we'll start there. Would last year be an A plus? And then what would you grade this year?
Dude, honestly, I thought this year we looked better than last year by like a significant margin going up into the Big Ten championship game. And then even in the Big Ten championship game, like I don't know, I still felt like we played a great game. Our kicker missed a 27-yard field goal. We lost the game by 3 points. You know, it felt like a little bit of a fluke. I was like, you know what? It's not a huge deal. Indiana's an awesome team. Like if they're not the best team in the country, they're number two, and we're the best team in the country. I wasn't really all that nervous about it. And then going up against Miami, who had two weird losses against unranked teams, felt really comfortable against them. And so, yeah, I don't know. It was honestly pretty shocking. And I think we'll talk about it a little bit today in terms of like whether or not having that bye in that first round really plays a part in the college football playoff. As it seems like this year, all but Indiana the teams that had a bye, all but Indiana ended up losing and getting upset. And so, like, whether or not that plays a part in it, but yeah, I mean, it was obviously a disappointing season as a Bucks fan. But I mean, yeah, Miami obviously looks great. Carson Beck's been throwing the ball great, and yeah, I mean, credit
It's
to them.
23,
But
you'd hope.
yeah,
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 absolutely. Well, and I think even Kyle, off of your point, looking at the defensive players that we had coming back with just Caleb Downs and Sonny Styles and the depth that I didn't even know we had in Arvell Reese coming back and being what he turned out to be this season, just insane. I almost feel like defensively, like it was a no-brainer we would be better with some of those guys. And you'd think with Jeremiah Smith and Carnell, it would be the same. It just felt like, at least from my perspective, the last 2 weeks of the season with Indiana and Miami, it kind of felt like a common trend of just not being able to protect the quarterback. We got sacked so much, and Insane just had so much pressure. I felt like that seemed like a huge game changer, which I feel like is kind of what I'm excited about for this national championship game is how impressive the offensive and defensive lines for both of these teams have been, kind of exposing that weakness a little bit from the Bucks, and seeing the
Yep.
strength that Miami and Indiana have in those areas.
Yeah. Ian, one thing I wanted to ask you as a fellow Ohio State fan, it's
Yeah.
becoming almost a tradition now where Ohio State is playing on New Year's Eve and is in a tight game as
Oh
like the
my
clock
gosh,
is winding
yeah.
towards Eastern Coast midnight. If you remember back to the
The Georgia
2022-2023,
game. Oh my
yes,
gosh,
the
yeah.
CFP playoff where it was a different kicker. It was not Jaden Fielding,
I think it
but
was Fielding. I think it
oh my
was
gosh,
Fielding.
was it? If it was, that's
It was
unbelievable.
still
Like that guy
Fielding.
needs to
Yeah,
graduate and move on because gosh,
yeah.
he's cursed. Um, but yeah, right. That game where we end up missing that kick at as like the clock is striking midnight, and then again this year to have another Ohio State loss. Is it like I'm almost starting to like have a negative connotation towards New Year's Eve because of Ohio State football.
I know, and it really is it coming down to that. I feel like I remember it felt like the New Year's Six bowls. You'd watch like Ohio State in a Rose Bowl on New Year's Day or those types of games. But man, it really has outside of that Oregon game last year been kind of our downfall playing
Yeah,
in on New Year's or New
yeah.
Year's Eve rather this year. Um, so yeah, I mean, I kind of love the idea of celebrating the new year with college football, but as a Buckeye fan, man, it's been painful. And obviously, no hate toward Jaden Fielding. He's got a really tough job
Yep.
and has made plenty of important kicks for us. But man, that 2023 Georgia game is.
Hey, the Ravens might have an opening for Fielding if he wants to, go to the
Yeah.
pros
Oof.
now. So yeah, yeah. So
That,
Ian, you had
yeah, go
mentioned
ahead.
that you were really happy with what they were doing with the playoffs, and I'm not a huge college football. I keep up, but my team
Yeah.
is not. I'm a Baylor Bear. My team's not that competitive, all things considered. Um, so it's hard to be like super super dialed. But I was looking. The Athletic did a study like a few days ago, or study is the wrong word. Poll, and they asked. It was like 12,000 people, and they basically were like, "Do you like college football right now? Are you unsure if you like it?" Or, and answer three is literally no, it's a mess. And do either of y'all have a guess on what percent of the 12,000 people voted no, it is a mess?
Oh gosh, like
If
I
I would
guess
guess
I'm
like
asking. So
yeah, even up to like 60, 70%, like a massive amount of people probably.
yeah, especially this season, it feels like it was more of a mess with the way that the conference championships ended up and everything. So yeah,
yeah,
I'll get on board with that. That's a good guess.
yeah, it was 55
Okay.
percent. So right around there, and I that is anecdotally I would say that is kind of what I also the feel that I also get is that maybe
Yeah,
it's more NIL than it is the playoffs and just kind of the whole, not even just NIL, like the transfer portal and the coaching, Lane Kiffin, whatever, that whole saga. But it does feel like it is in a messy kind of situation where it's like both the Wild
yeah,
West, but also people are still holding on to the traditions that kind of make college football what people like it to be.
yeah.
Um, so all that to say, it is the 12-team playoff really a good thing? What's kind of your thoughts on it as a long time, playoff, a long time viewer of,
Yeah,
of the football?
yeah. So, man, I think that's a tough question because is it a good thing? Yes, maybe yes. Is it a good thing with the current format we have now? I think along with most of the viewing community, would argue no. And I think that comes down to a few core things. One of them being the bye, like Kyle mentioned earlier. The teams with the byes are 1-7, and I would be hard pressed to say all 7 of those teams that have lost were the worst teams in those situations. Granted, were some situations like when Ohio State played Oregon last year. That was a really close game during the regular season. We lost on Will Howard sliding as time was expiring when we were in field goal range and could have won that game. So that's a coin flip. Maybe Miami, we'll find out, is the better team than Ohio State. They just had some weird losses earlier in the season. But a few of these other games, I genuinely think it was a matter of um, we either formatted it wrong or we need to change the timeline of things. And so I know there's been a lot of discussion of, do we play all of the playoff games prior to New Year's Day? Because that addresses, like you said, the transfer portal stuff, that addresses the long wait times for these teams, that addresses so many different things. Or do we expand it up to 16 teams to make it so that there isn't that bye and there also isn't that wait? Which is, I would say, where you start to say, okay, maybe 12 isn't the right number. And the other piece of it is how many of these group of 5 teams are we letting in? I think there was an argument, obviously,
Letting in.
for right, you're right. And so I think there's an argument for Tulane this year. They beat Duke, who is the ACC champion. They had some quality wins. If you look at a lot of these other games that they played, really competitive teams and really solid results. They beat Northwestern and a few other Power Four, I guess now, teams. But then you have teams like JMU that, I mean, obviously, yes, they were ranked at the end of the season, had a lot of argument to be in it. But the question is, how many of those teams do we want in this playoff when we could be having a lot of other teams that may have been more competitive? I think back on another situation, 2020, 2021-ish, when there was like that Cincinnati team. I think that's the first one that I recall being like really like, oh man, this is a group of 5 team that I'm like, this team actually could probably compete. And like,
Yeah.
it was like Desmond Ritter, Jerome Ford, Alec Pierce, Trey Tucker. I think the year before they had Sauce Gardner, like all these guys that now you look at the NFL, you're like, oh man, these are some dogs. And it's like, that's a team that I'm like, man, if that team didn't get a chance to compete, like that would have been a loss, I think, for college football. But also, where do you draw that line?
It feels like if we're going to, just going to 16 teams is like the just add more lanes to the highway thing. It's like, is this really the right answer? But also, you can't, you can't. Once you go to 12, you can't really go back to 8. It feels like it doesn't feel like that's in the cards. I don't know. Too many people might revolt about that. I mean, I guess you never know. But like, once the NFL went to 14-team playoff, I don't feel like they're ever going back to a 12-team playoff. So it just kind of, what is the saying? Toothpaste out of the bottle. You can't put the toothpaste out of the bottle.
Can't put it back in.
Can't put it back in. Yeah. So I don't know.
That's true. I've been trying to compare it to, I mean, see, the NFL is a really easy comparison, right? Like where teams do have buys in the NFL for wild card weekend and going into the first round of playoffs. And so like, and I don't feel like there's the same sort of concern there with teams being rusty and all this, even though, I mean, they also take off a significant amount of time between the playoff rounds. And you can chalk that up to, they've got the experience and seniority to not fumble with that when they don't play for a week or something like that. Not fumble literally, but fumble mentally, I guess. But I don't know. I also don't think 8 is a big enough sample size. If, these teams with buys are 1-7 over the last 2 years of doing this 12-team playoff, like, I don't know, they're definitely going to let it ride for a while. I think like, the committee and the NCAA or whatever isn't going to change it anytime soon, just because I think it'd be a bad look to have these formats constantly changing, which they've already done. I mean, you think about how it went first to the 14 playoff, and then that only lasted like 10 years, maybe. I think 2014 was the first one there, which coincidentally Ohio State won the first. Sorry, I got to give a shout out, but they have won both times that they changed the format. Ohio State has won the national championship. So I
think we got to keep changing the format every year is what I'm hearing.
Most adaptable team. Yeah. But I guess the other comparison I've been trying to make, just because I think it's kind of interesting, is like March Madness is another. So if you want to think like, okay, if it's the experience that the, professional teams have that college doesn't have, you can think of a tournament like March Madness where, 16 seeds in the first round were 0 and however many for the first 50 years, whatever, ever since they started doing it. And then finally, in the last few years, we've started seeing a 16 seed win. And like, is that, we could have had the argument like, oh, so the first, the number 1 seed should just get a bye and it should be would that be a 60 team bracket in March Madness? But obviously we didn't do that. And we just kept it at 64 because of the chance of a team winning.
Or 68, depending on how you factor the first 4
That's true. The rat tails.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just depending on how you
Yeah.
count them.
But yeah, and so I don't know. I'm always a fan of a clean square bracket. I think it makes sense. It's how things should go, and I don't really see a huge reason to. If you're going to do something like 12, then you might as well do 16. I'm always all for that. I think it just makes more sense. It's more fair as a general competition. I guess my only other thing, and I want to pose this to you guys, is what if you seed like 8 through 12, or maybe I guess would it be, yeah, I think 8 through 12, and then you allow 1 through 7 to pick where they go in the bracket, starting with the 1 seed. So if the 1 seed really didn't want to buy, they could choose to go in the 5 spot, and then they would get a first round.
They would
matchup.
always choose a buy. You have to think.
You would think so, right? But if your team, you're like, no, we want to, yeah. But that would at least like alleviate this blame that you can then put on the CFP of being like, oh, well, that's why we lost, which I don't think any of these teams are doing, or players are doing, or coaches.
And you get a little bit like, if Indiana picks JMU, then JMU's got like bulletin board material. So maybe there could be a little bit of extra juice there.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think they would ever do that, but man, it'd be fun.
I guess what I'm curious about too is kind of, we discussed a little bit earlier, like the impact of what NIL and the transfer portal and all these other things are doing to college football, and I'm curious to see maybe more and more how much that's going to impact a 12-team playoff, in terms of like. You look at what Curt Cignetti's done at Indiana, and man, I did not even know who Fernando Mendoza really was last year. I mean, I had heard of him, but Cal was like not. I mean, Cal was not really on the map last year. I think that was their first year in the ACC. I think that's when, I mean, Kyle McCord transferred to Syracuse and led the country in passing as like kind of the underdog story of the ACC, and Cal was just kind of doing their thing, not being super successful, and then Fernando Mendoza transfers to Indiana and turns into what he is. Cignetti's done it again. If you look at their transfer portal class, and it's just dudes from all over, like a new quarterback from TCU reloading from all these like group of 5 schools, and just like, I mean, he pulled guys from JMU, he's pulled guys from Cal and TCU and all over the place, and so I'm wondering if we continue to see these group of 5 teams struggle because of this transfer portal, whether it makes more sense to like work toward a system where there's not as much guarantee for the group of 5. I hate to be like the devil's advocate in that, like obviously talking about like Cincinnati, how good they were before, and like obviously you can make an argument last year that Boise State truly had a place in the playoff with Ashton Genty, and um but there's other years where, like, I remember a couple of years ago, Liberty was undefeated and they were ranked, and then they got like clobbered in a bowl game. JMU, obviously, really great team. Hats off to them for the season they had. But, like, is there a room to say, hey, maybe the group of 5 some years doesn't belong? I hate to do that to the smaller schools, but I don't know. Are we trending toward that? Is that an option, or you think they'll? I don't know.
It does feel like it's trending that way. I'm not sure I'd say I think it's a good, healthy thing for the full environment. Like,
Yeah.
when there are poverty franchises, and again, well, the most obvious comparison is the NFL, but there's at least the draft system to kind of give this like rotating leg up to the worst teams. They don't always take advantage of it correctly or well, but if you're, especially with the transfer portal, let's say you are, JMU this year, like maybe as JMU is a bad example because they did get to the playoffs, but let's say you're,
Or
I can't
like
even think.
Navy, or like North
Sure.
Texas, or those teams that were right there.
Sure. How do you, I guess you have to, I mean, Indiana kind of was able to turn it around, so maybe you can always turn it around and there's always a playbook, but I just worry it turns into this kind of like rags and riches thing where there is like no middle. And that the whole thing of college football is that people get really invested in their school and they can be a proud alumni, like almost no matter how good, obviously people who go to Ohio State can be maybe more proud of their football program for whatever reason. But you know, if it's like, oh, I like rooting for my football. You know, my wife went to Boston College, and like their football program, people just didn't even show up to the games because they never thought they had a chance. And it's like, sure, there's always going to be bad teams. Like it's not like, but if that is the majority, you know, if the middle is just going to be kind of relegated because of the environment and how the players can or can't move around, or are incentivized by the money of the bigger schools. I don't know. That doesn't. Maybe I'm being too much of a doomer. What do you think, Kyle?
Gosh, I mean, here's the thing. Indiana is not a poverty program, right? Like in terms of it's all relative, and relative to, you know, at the end of the day, they're in the Big Ten. They've got a bunch of money coming their way. Even though, I mean, right, like last year they were good with their first season with Cignetti. I think they were 11-2 last year.
I mean, playoff
crazy.
team, yeah.
Before that, though,
they do have a huge
second
alumni
winning
base.
season in the 2000s, I think. Like that, they had one. They went 7 and they were bowl eligible one other time since like the year 2000.
Like,
I think this is their third winning season.
This millennium, yeah. No,
yeah,
so, like,
right.
Yeah, like they were obviously terrible and like honestly so irrelevant for the, you know, the entirety of since I.
They were relevant because they were
bad,
and they were a bad Big Ten team. Like they were the Tennessee. Tennessee of.
And so I think it's easy to think of them as like a rags to riches story, but like, you know, I think of a team like maybe, oh gosh, this team also is not. UCF, we'll say, when they like had that crazy undefeated season in, what was that, like 2016 or something like that, and they like claimed themselves to be national champions because they didn't play in in the championship game.
Sick move, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, yes. In an ironic way, though, now that those teams are getting to play in these playoff games like JMU did this season in Tulane, and like then when they kind of get dumpstered on, it was almost better before when you could just be like, we deserve to play a better team, and instead we got put in this bowl game and we won our bowl game, so we are arguably the best team in the country, but we'll never know. And I think it's really just showing that, like, no, especially with NIL nowadays and the way that the transfer portal works, the best teams and the teams with the most money are just able to get the best players, and that seems to be mattering a lot.
Here's my question is, do the bowl games even matter now? Like if let's say the playoff goes to 16 teams, it's like, do I even care about, I mean, Notre Dame already opted out. It's the second year of the 12-team playoffs, which we can hold thoughts about that, the morals of that aside. But like, do the bowl games matter? If it's like, okay, well, I didn't make the 16-team bracket or the 12-team bracket or whatever this state is.
Do the schools get some sort of bonus for winning their bowl game? I thought they do.
They gotta.
You get some kind of bonus for sure. It's just a bummer too when teams are playing in places that are like rigid. Like there was I forget what bowl it was, but they were playing in like upstate New York, and I'm like, why are we doing this in the middle of December?
It's to train them. They might get drafted by the Buffalo Bills. I don't know. I feel like that's fair.
There you go. But yeah, no, I think that's a great question, Matt. I think there are a lot of programs that don't care as much about bowls if they're not playing for a championship. I think you have a lot of matchups though that are really great matchups for the sport still. I think of like Michigan playing against Texas. I think of TCU had a great game against the 16th ranked USC team that, I mean, was in the conversation to make the playoff until the last couple weeks of the season.
Sure. Yeah.
I think it really says something too about conferences. If you look at like the dominance that the SEC has had over the past couple of decades, but then the ways they've been struggling in bowl games over the past couple of seasons, even down to like Vandy, who people were like, okay, this team got kind of wrecked by the playoff format and they should have been in, but because of the conference championships and all these things, they were out. They end up losing to a middle of the pack Big Ten team in Iowa. I think Iowa finished probably 5th or 6th in the Big Ten, and like a couple other matchups like that, like Illinois, who started the season as a top 10 team, coming down into Nashville to play Tennessee, who again, another SEC, been really strong SEC powerhouse team the last couple of years, playoff team last year, ends up losing to another Big Ten team. So I think it's interesting to see how you can kind of see the strength of conferences in bowl games, but I think outside of that, man, the players opting out and all the other loss of hype, it's tough.
It's also tough when they keep switching the conferences around. It's like
Yeah.
it's hard to have as much conference pride or rivalry, when it's
Sure,
like,
sure.
okay, I really cared about being in the Big 12 and now I'm not. And now I'm,
Yeah.
whatever the situation is, like you don't have that same identity.
Yeah. Something I'm interested though is to what degree this bowl success possibly shifts some of this conference realignment. So like for example, I think about like TCU when they had Andy Dalton a while back. I mean, they were really successful, and then they end up joining from the Mountain West to the eventually the Big 12. Um, and then like these teams like Cincinnati, who is now in the Big 12 as well, after they were in the American when they had like that Desmond Ritter, all those other guys. It almost makes you wonder, like with I understand there's like a Pac-12 rebuild, I think that's kind of in the future of happening. So do these teams that are emerging as these kind of strength of the Group 5, Tulane and Boise State and like all those types of teams, is there a place where, hey, seeing this bowl success and seeing the success they've had as a program, both in football and basketball and these other sports, kind of allows for a conference like the Pac-12 to rebuild off of the Mountain West and the American and these other conferences that they see to be strengths? I'm curious
Like a
if we
Premier
do
League
see that.
relegation system or something. Like,
Yeah,
oh,
to
you,
some degree, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a good example.
Yeah, so that if that were to be the case, though, I mean, I feel like conferences would become geographically irrelevant, which they are already quickly
I mean,
becoming.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I personally think that that's like bad for the sport. It's bad for probably the players too. Like you forget that. I mean, a lot of these players are also student athletes and
yeah,
like
oh, yeah.
are involved in like normal student things, and then instead they have to catch a flight across the country on a Friday or a Thursday, and like I don't know. I think it messes with like rivalries and things like that. It's hard to if you live in Ohio and you want to go to Big Ten games, it's like much easier when they're playing someone like Illinois as opposed
Mhm.
to Oregon or USC, and it just changes a lot about it, which I think is objectively bad from my perspective.
I think it's cool that certain regions, I, m- I guess it was cool that certain regions had different play styles, and that does not
Yeah.
seem to be as much of a case, which I do think is probably a negative. But to your point about the travel, like they were even talking about this in the NFL, and those are people who have like private jets and team physio, and not that the college teams don't, but like the NFL to an even bigger degree. Like the whole thing is that the 49ers really wanted the one seed so they didn't have to fly from San Francisco to go play, you know, uh, Philly. And it's like flying is a big deal, and just the time and it I think you're exactly right that the geographic is there's so much emphasis on them being student athletes, and now it's like they're barely even students. I feel like at this point, not
Yeah.
not talking about their intellectual ability, but more just like their role as on the campus.
Yeah.
Yeah,
When Stanford is in the Atlantic Coast Conference, you know you have a problem.
yeah, that's right.
So true. And it is funny because it feels like the SEC is the one holy grail that has not been touched yet. And like that one stays as
Yeah.
the Southeast. And like
Yeah.
I do kind of wonder in my head, like if a team like Oregon would have ended up joining the SEC as opposed to the Big Ten, which geographically is just as relevant. I think like
Yeah.
that would have, it would have gotten even when they joined the Big Ten, it was a big deal and like people were upset about that. But I think it would have not flown at all if that happened
Oh yeah.
to the SEC.
Absolutely.
No pun intended.
Have you guys looked into this like TV rights stuff with college football on Saturdays at all?
Yeah.
I think
Like which networks have rights to which like conference?
well, it's less that and more. I only kind of learned this recently that there was like some broadcasting act in like the 50s or 60s that basically said that the NFL is not allowed to schedule games on Saturday to compete with college football. And I have not like fully checked my sources on this, but I think I saw that act is coming to an end in the next few years, which basically means the NFL is free to do the thing that they always do and try and take as much share of the TV as possible. And I worry about that a little bit for college football because it feels very the people are ingrained in the tradition of college football on Saturdays, NFL on Sundays. But like we just got it. This season had like 4 NFL games on Fridays. I mean, I know there were the international games, which is like a little weird, but
and then a couple games on Saturday.
Yeah, yeah, and again, and they were more like scheduling quirks, which I think is kind of how they got around it.
Right.
But the NBA I think already suffers from competing with the NFL. Like I think the NBA should start its season later because the NFL is just such a juggernaut with TV ratings. I don't want college football to also fall by the wayside. I don't know if you guys have any kind of thoughts about that.
I guess my first thought is, I mean, the NFL pulls way more viewers, and it's I mean, in America, I think like it's different if you looked at maybe the NBA. I feel like there's more of an international scene for the NBA.
Sure.
But I mean, thinking about the NFL putting games in competition with college football, I don't think they would win that battle. I mean, we're starting to see it on Christmas Day, where the NFL has started to have games on Christmas Day, which I mean, every household's different, but I definitely watched some of the NFL games that were on Christmas Day this year, whereas like that was never a thing in the past. It was always an NBA day, and like you're saying, Matt.
Well, the NFL games sucked, and the NBA games were sweet. So the NBA still owns Christmas to me, but
for sure.
To your point, I'm sure a lot of households.
Encroaching.
Yes, they are encroaching. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's tough. I've always been such a college sports fan that even if you were to put an NFL game on the same day as college football, I think I would be more engaged with college football. So I think you definitely have that group of fans. Obviously, the students are going to be fans of watching their own team, and don't get me wrong, I'll certainly still follow my fantasy team and see how they're scoring and doing. But outside of that, it's really, Saturday is college football day for me. I don't think they would move all of the games to Saturday. So I would say I'm almost hard pressed to see a world where the NFL would be able to fully compete on a Saturday, just because there is so much of a, like we said earlier, like a fandom for your school, for your conference, for your you can. There's one thing about rooting for a team that's in your city. Like, my wife being from Dallas, there's plenty of Cowboys fans that I know literally would do anything for the Cowboys, but I think there's something different about like going to the school, yeah, right. Yeah. But I don't know. I think college is just, at least in my opinion, is just different. I've always loved it to a different degree, so I don't see a world where the NFL could.
There's a lot to be said about the habit of like watching college football on Saturday and then watching the NFL on Sunday, that I think people are just so ingrained on that I don't see that switching up anytime soon.
Do y'all watch? Sorry, go.
I was just going to say, I think that's what's an interesting conversation too about the college football playoff, is if we change and adjust the timeline of it, how do we adjust it so that it's also navigating that schedule with the NFL?
I mean, even having these most previous playoff games on Thursday and Friday night was strange for me. Like, I didn't catch either of the games in totality because I was busy doing other things, because they're on like weeknights as opposed to when I would typically watch a football game.
Well, I think it's just probably because the NFL had games on Saturday and Sunday, and we're like late in the, normally college football, I say normally, in the 4-team system, the college football season was wrapped up by this point. So there's some weird, there might be the inter-week rhythms, but like in the whole year, it's like, it feels like we're kind of should be done with college football, but obviously we're still talking about it. Do you guys follow, do you have like a allegiance to Ohio State players that go to the pros? My school does not produce a ton of NFL players, so I don't really get to answer this question.
I would say to some degree.
Definitely. I mean, I follow them more than other players, and like even, Marvin Harrison Jr. I was rooting for all year this season, which was unfortunate, as he was, expected to have a lot better of a season. And so I think, I definitely hold
just
them.
took him out for weeks, I guess. and
No
a
one's
heel
safe from
injury.
appendicitis. Yeah.
Yeah, weird year.
But yeah, I definitely put them like under a magnifying glass more than
Yep.
I do other players. I think more so actually I do it for college basketball players that go to the NBA that I've watched, which isn't as
Okay.
frequent with Ohio State players. But yeah, I think mainly maybe just because it's a smaller league.
There's certainly some pride though in seeing JSN Jackson Smith-Njigba do as well as he
Totally.
has
Oh
with the
my
Seahawks this
gosh,
season. And I mean, there's
so
always the
awesome.
debate between Ohio State receivers and LSU receivers as to who has the best. And so seeing him and Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave had a pretty good season.
Great
Marv had
season.
a solid season. So I would say for me, it's a lot of the competition for like wide receiver U. And even like it's been great seeing we've never really been a huge quarterback school. But like seeing CJ have such a good rookie season and a lot of the defensive players, the Bosa brothers, Chase Young, and then man, we've had a bunch of different
Yeah.
DBs that have been all over the league that have been really successful. So it's always fun, especially draft day too, and this upcoming year as well, seeing guys like Arvell Reese and Kaden McDonald and Caleb Downs, Carnell Tate, all guys that have
Mhm.
first round draft stock that should go pretty early. Um, Watching the draft gets more exciting for sure when you have those types of guys.
Caleb
Yeah,
Downs
and
is
also
probably going to go to a good team, and we're all going to be like, "How did that team get Caleb Downs?" And then
yeah.
it's just what's going to happen. I don't know. He's not going to get taken by the Jets or something, but he's probably going to get taken by, I don't know, like the Chiefs. They have like the 9th pick or something.
They have the
So
ninth pick, yeah. Man, I'm hoping he slips to 10. I'm a Bengals fan, and we could really use him.
you could.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, it's funny. Like you mentioned Cornell Tate, and he's like a player that I almost feel like I'm rooting for so hard. Not only because he went to Ohio State, but also just like the history there, and because he went to your school and you've watched a lot of the games. Like you end up hearing about like the personal side of the players, and he's just like always been such a cool guy, and he's got a really cool story, and how he made it to where he is now. And obviously, he's going to make it to the league. And so, like players like that, you root for like way more because you know more about them. Yeah, that's a good shout.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's funny too. I remember Marv when he was getting drafted, literally said Carnell is about to be that guy. Like he's the next man up.
Yeah.
And then like sneaky Emeka Egbuka just turns into like what he had of a rookie season and as good as he is.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
man, just the ability to reload in college is always so fun to watch.
I think draft. Speaking of draft, it's a good place to segue. Are you, high level question, Ian? Would you be happy to be an NFL team right now with like let's say you get a top 3 draft pick, taking out the situation of the teams that are those top 3 draft picks, but
Yeah.
like of the prospects, would you be happy? Would you be kind of deflated? What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Man, base I guess gut thought is the quarterback class is decent. It's not like crazy outstanding um like best quarterbacks you've seen. I think Mendoza's solid. If you look at his stats though compared to like previous Heisman winning quarterbacks, um his stats aren't necessarily as good, but I think it goes
He
a
throws
lot
a good ball though.
beyond the
Using
stats.
the eye
He does throw a
test.
good ball.
Yeah.
Eye test is solid. I'm interested to see whether or not I've heard a lot of discussion about him and Dante Moore being kind of 1-2. In terms of like Mendoza could also go second behind Moore from Oregon. But I think in
If
terms of
Moore
like some of the
goes to the draft, yeah.
yeah, true, good. That's an excellent point. Um, but a lot of other players like I mean Ruben Bain is insane for Miami and guys like Caleb Downs, Arvell Reese. I think if I needed a defensive player, I'd be really happy.
Yeah.
Um, Tyson from ASU, great receiver. Carnell Tate, great receiver. So I would say defensively, I would say really strong class.
Yeah.
Quarterback class,
That's
and
my
and
thought too.
ultimately, I feel like half the time that's what the draft comes down to, is is what's the quarterback class looking like. Um, I would say I'm
Yeah,
not blown
that's
away,
the
but
media favorites. Yeah. Yeah. We don't
it
look
is
back and we're
interesting.
like, oh, you remember the 2018 draft where you remember like, oh, that was the Bryce Young draft, and then that was the Justin Fields draft, and that was the Caleb Williams draft. Like that's how we
Yeah,
think about these, whether we should or not. Like this will be the Mendoza or Dante Moore draft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it is interesting in discussion too, even of the Giants sticking with Jackson Dart or drafting a quarterback. I know there's been a lot of discussion of that as
Sure.
well, or like other things like that, that like it just shifts the NFL so much when there's these other free agents based on the draft that I don't know. I think it'll be an interesting year to see even how uh, the sophomore players, not the rookies, but the guys in their second year, I think are going to make a lot more impact because of how some of these draft classes shake up different teams' rosters.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because I feel like having Mendoza and Dante Moore, presuming he goes to the draft, like both of those are such, it seems like solid picks at quarterback. The problem is there's just so many NFL programs that need a quarterback so badly, it feels like. Like the Raiders and the Jets are having the first 2 picks, and both of them are almost certainly taking
They need one.
Mendoza. Yeah. And so, and even, I mean, the Cardinals have the 3rd pick, and they would love to take a quarterback, I'm sure. And then the Browns, of course, have to mention them, which it doesn't look like it's not looking great for our chances of picking up one of those top players.
You tell me you don't want
least
Deshaun Watson to start?
Oh, jeez.
I am telling you, I do not want Deshaun Watson to start.
And you can take that one to the bank.
Absolutely. But yeah, and so I think that's part of it, is just like every team is just searching for their guy at quarterback, and if you have a bad year, you almost you blame not having a franchise quarterback at the helm of it.
It's the easy scapegoat. Yeah,
it's an easy scapegoat, and so these teams are just cycling through them. And so yeah, even though, I mean, I think Mendoza looks like he could be an awesome NFL quarterback. Dante Moore also looked great throughout the season and even in the playoffs. But
if they're a Raider and a Jet respectively, then it's like,
woof. Raiders, honestly, the Raiders, gosh, they seem like they've got so much going for them.
I know.
It's just the big main pieces just aren't there, and they were not there this season. Obviously with Pete Carroll, which I don't know, did they fire him?
He's gone.
He's
one of the guys. He got let go on Black Monday.
He did, and they don't look like they're a top contender to get like Harbaugh or Mike McDaniel. So where do you guys think Jeremiah Love is going to go? Just running backs are famously hard to draft like perfectly, but he's, kind of the superstar coming out.
Gosh, man. I have no idea, because it feels like, oh man, where's he even? He's not expected to get picked up until like later. I feel like
that's just mostly because there's so many good defensive players and a few good line people. Yeah,
I've seen mock drafts have him in the top 12, top 15. So I mean, I think definitely first round. He's a solid running back. I could see him being a top 10 guy. I think, like I said, and like you said, so many solid defensive players. There's a couple solid offensive linemen too that I've seen that are potentially top 10, top 15 picks. So
I'm just thinking it might be a situation where, like, when the Lions drafted Jahmyr Gibbs and they kind of reached for him, and it's like that's kind of the you're not really supposed to do that, and obviously it's worked out. I don't know. I feel like there's a little bit of like edge there of you don't like paying less attention to the who's going to be the maximum like value kind of here with their potential contract and all that, and just kind of drafting the good players. And I think he's obviously a good player, but I don't know. I won't get hung up on that.
Drafting a back is kind of volatile, though. I feel like that's one of the most injury prone positions.
Like Genty,
so it's hard.
The Raiders probably.
I
don't know if. Yeah, they'd probably redraft Genty, but it's hard. They might draft an O-line guy.
Scadaboo.
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah, and so I feel like that's one of the bigger reasons that backs just don't end up going super high in the draft often. Whereas, I mean, a quarterback's obviously one of the more injury safe positions, and then even like picking up a good safety, like Caleb Downs from Ohio State's going to go really high, and I think like that's another position that's just like more of a safe pick.
Don't call quarterbacks injury safe to our Bengals fan here, Ian.
Woof. Yeah.
Yeah. When your season is decided by whether or not Joe Burrow is healthy.
Yeah. If you have a more functional offensive line, it should be a safer position, which the Bengals have not had. Yeah. Cool. Okay. honestly, I feel like that's just about everything I wanted to touch on. I guess I wanted to talk just briefly. We'll jump back to college football really quick. The finals. We didn't really talk much about Miami and Indiana as they're facing off. Indiana's an 8.5-point favorite, which is, gosh, got to be, for a national championship game, especially in the 12th team playoff. I don't remember what it was last year with Ohio State and Notre Dame, but I bet it was a lot closer than 8.5 points. Miami, most of their playoff games have just looked really tight. They've played great teams. They've been challenged a lot more. And so, thinking back to, we were talking about this idea of teams being rusty and other teams that get games being warmer. In some ways, Miami is more warmed up for this national championship game. They've had really close games that they're barely winning. But on the flip side of it, Indiana's just been crushing teams. It's been their season. They've been the story of 2025. And it's
been too easy
like,
for them, maybe.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. If this is going to be if the narrative is going to be that these teams are rusty and need more, need warmed up into their games. We'll see what happens. I think Miami it felt like they've had so many weird plays that end up winning them these games. Like there was the pick six in the OSU game that really just felt like that changed the tides, and then they ended up up 14-0 at half, which just ended up being too much. And then even in the semifinal game against Ole Miss, they just had some really big plays with Beck throwing multiple 50-yard passes that ended up winning them that game. So yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to do that as a little bit of a quick primer. If you guys had any thoughts about the national championship game.
I'll just say it this way: I don't have any reason
yeah.
to not bet on Indiana. I would like to have a fun zag here and be like, I'm going to take, Miami for XYZ reason. But they don't feel like a team of destiny. And Indiana has not given me yet a reason to doubt this entire season. So there you go. Those are my thoughts.
No, and I think,
I'll give a little bit of, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I have to ride that same line. Indiana is just so good. It would be so hard to pick against them. I think it really is going to come down to the line. You look at Miami's run game against Ohio State, a team that throughout the season has been known for allowing less points from inside the 5-yard line than outside the 5-yard line. I think they had 4 or 5 goal line stands where 4 downs in a row, a team couldn't get more than a yard. And so you imagine that's what you get with the Ohio State defense, and you watch Miami run the ball consistently for 4, 5, 6 yards that whole game. Yards after contact. Their O-line just looked dominant, and same with their D-line. And I think the profile of both teams was very similar, especially in the games that they played against Ohio State, where their offensive line blocked incredibly well and their defensive line got to the quarterback incredibly well. I think the difference is going to be Fernando Mendoza and Elijah Surratt and Omar Cooper. I think Indiana just has more firepower on the offensive side of the ball. Nothing against Carson Beck. I think he's a great quarterback. I think he's done great things this season, but I just think the offense of Indiana is so much better in a game where I think both offensive lines and both defensive lines are strong. I think it'll be a dogfight at the line, but ultimately I think it comes down to the fact that Indiana just has more firepower on offense.
And Mendoza's taking care of the ball the entire season.
A lot better. Yeah. I think the only time I've seen Indiana look like they weren't bulletproof was that Penn State game where a couple seconds left, Mendoza throws that touchdown in the back of the end zone where Omar Cooper, I have no idea how, gets half of his toe into the end zone awesome. And ends up scoring that touchdown to go ahead and win that game. But I think Indiana learned from that. I think from then on, it's been, full steam ahead.
Smooth.
They just don't look like a team that can be beat.
Yeah. Well, only last thing I'll say, because I was waiting for one of you guys to zag with the Carson Beck love, because I got it.
He looked more mobile those last couple games.
He's impressed me. Yeah. Yeah, he's impressed me.
More mobile
He's
than
honestly
like a guy with arthritis, I guess. I don't know. Sorry.
He's been throwing the ball well. And I mean, there's got to be probably something to be said about that. He's been on he was on 2 national championship teams with Georgia.
It's true.
And so like he's been there. He's got a little bit of poise. Not to say Mendoza doesn't. I mean, Mendoza's
been around the
mental
block.
game. Yeah, he seems that way. Yeah, yeah, he's probably wife and kids. But
10 kids. Philip Rivers.
Right. But yeah, and so that's the only zag point that I'll make is just like if it does come down to a close game, I could see like that playing a little bit of a part in it, and Miami coming away with some huge random plays that kind of throw Indiana off. But
it's still college sports. Weird things happen. It's
right.
It's not like the pros are that predictable either, but you feel like you kind of get more of a shape. And college sports, I mean, that's kind of why we love them. Yeah,
just kids,
except for Carson.
Just kids that are making $4, $5, $6 million.
Dude, for real. Yeah, awesome. Okay, Ian, thank you so much. Thanks for joining. It's been awesome having you. You're a plethora of knowledge when it comes to college football, and it's awesome hearing you talk about it. Matt,
I appreciate you guys having me.
And
this was awesome.
Cool. Go Hurricanes, go Hoosiers.